What's up, y'all? Let's talk about the pros and cons of living in Duluth, Georgia. Duluth is in Gwinnett County and the northwest part of Metro Atlanta, and it's not really a suburb that we talk a whole lot about on this channel, so let's break it down a little bit. Duluth is really one of the best suburbs in all of Metro Atlanta. It is definitely one of the most popular, but there are a lot of pros that make it super popular, and there's a lot of people who want to live in this area, but there are also a lot of cons of living in Duluth. And so it's quite divisive. And so let's really break it down so that you can understand as much as possible about this city if you're thinking about moving there. I really want to make sure, especially in this video and on this YouTube channel, that we are as transparent as possible about all of these cities so that you can have the good and the bad before making the move to any one of these suburbs that you are considering. One of the first pros about living in Duluth is its downtown area. Many suburbs have a kind of city center or downtown area, but Duluth has an exceptional one. They've got so many great stores and restaurants in this downtown area. It's a bit historic as well. There's a really big park, green space area where you can regularly find people hanging out, especially kids there playing. And so it's definitely one of the highlights of living in Duluth. And then another pro is absolutely the public schools in this city. Being part of Gwinnett County, it's known for having some of the best public schools in all of Metro Atlanta and in all of Georgia. This is one of the biggest factors why so many people move to this city. There are some suburbs around Metro Atlanta that are like, you can find some good schools, but some of the schools are bad. And so it's kind of like spotty, but not the case for Duluth. Almost all of these schools, if not all of them, are excellent public schools, and so definitely something to consider if you are moving to Duluth. And then, of course, if you have any questions about moving to Duluth or you're considering purchasing a home here, feel free to call, text, or email me anytime. Thank you so much to everybody who has reached out. I'm always happy to help. Another big pro of living in this city is the Asian food that you can find here. Absolutely the best in all of Metro Atlanta is Duluth when it comes to finding Asian food. There is a really healthy population of Asian people in this city, and so it has been a great part about living here is the amount of excellent food that you can find here. And so that's definitely a big one for a lot of people as well. Now, I know many people want to live in the suburbs of Atlanta, but not quite the city of Atlanta. They don't want that inner city lifestyle. They don't want that urban lifestyle. They want to live in an area where there are a lot of families and you can find the good schools. And so it can be kind of a difficult balance to find a suburb that is not super far away from Atlanta. It still has that good proximity to Atlanta, but it's not the city life. Duluth is definitely one of those cities where you can find good proximity to the city of Atlanta. You're not super far out, but you still have that suburban lifestyle. Many young families living in this city. And so that's really a big one that brings a lot of people to Duluth. You can be in the suburbs and you're only 30 to 45 minutes on a bad day away from Atlanta. There are a few major roads that go from Duluth to Atlanta, but Interstate 85 is certainly the biggest one. This is the interstate system that goes throughout Atlanta. Interstate 85 is one of the major roads, and I-85 connects Duluth to Atlanta and is the main thoroughfare for people who are commuting in and out of Atlanta from Duluth. And then being in the suburbs, another great thing about living here is the parks and the safety. This is a really low crime area, definitely a big reason why many people live here. And then also there are lots of parks and green space all around the city, as you can expect in many of the suburbs of Metro Atlanta. But Duluth really has an exceptionally lot amount, I don't know if that's a word, a lot of parks in this city. And so that's really a big part of living here. There's a lot of green space, a lot of nature in general in Duluth. And so this is really a big one as well for living in this city. Okay, now let's talk about some of the downsides of living in Duluth. Again, I want to make sure that you know all of the good and the bad of any suburb that we talk about. And so let's talk about some of the cons of living in Duluth. Right away, when we talk about the amount of nature and the parks, as you can imagine, there are a lot of trees in Duluth. There are a lot of trees in all of Metro Atlanta, but especially in Duluth. And so the trees are cool, and a lot of people love all of the nature and the trees. But if these trees are really close to your home, they can be problematic, especially for pine trees. I know I've said this many times on the channel before. These pine trees tend to fall over easily, like more easily than some of the other different trees. Hickory trees, oak trees, they don't tend to fall over as easily, but pine trees have kind of a shorter lifespan. So any pine trees that are within 100 feet of the home, you really need to be careful. And we tend to have a lot of that here in Duluth. And then if you are somebody who has a lot of seasonal allergies, as I do, then this amount of nature and green space can be problematic. And so for me, I take like a daily allergy pill that kind of like alleviates those seasonal allergies. But this is definitely something that would affect you if you have those seasonal allergies and you lived in an area with as much green space and trees as this city. Some other cons of living here is definitely not like a nightlife in Duluth. You know, it's not like Atlanta. So a lot of things close here like at 9 o'clock. You know, you're not going to find a whole lot of things to do at like 10 p.m., you know, especially on a weekday. This is really a family-friendly suburb, so there's not a whole lot of things to do in the evenings. And then public transportation, again, you can find a lot of that in Atlanta, but in Duluth, it's not as good. They do have the Gwinnett public transportation, but it's not quite as thorough or as efficient as MARTA, which is saying a lot. Even MARTA sucks. So the public transportation in Duluth is not something that I would bank on. In the last 90 days, the average sold price for a home in Duluth has been $520,000. Now, in my opinion, this is a bit overpriced. I'm not really a fan of that price for this city, but if you absolutely needed to be in Duluth, maybe you needed to be close to work or close to family, then it definitely makes sense. But for any suburb of Metro Atlanta, I think that that price is a little bit high for Duluth. And so definitely something that you want to think about, especially considering that some of the homes in Duluth are kind of on the older side. And so because it's much closer to Atlanta than some of the other suburbs, as you can imagine, this is a city that has been developed longer ago than some of the more newer up and coming cities. So you see a lot of 70s and 80s homes in Duluth. And again, at that price point, $520,000, in my opinion, you really have to be careful. Maybe for a upgraded, modernized, renovated home, absolutely, that 520 mark is probably a good price. But for a 1970s home that has not been renovated, I'm not really a fan, so something you want to think about. And then lastly, if you live in the city of Duluth, that is, like if you live within the city limits, not in the outskirts of Duluth, you would be paying for the city property taxes and the county property taxes. The county is Gwinnett County. Compare that to living in the outskirts of Duluth, where you're not necessarily super close to the city limits. You could be living in Gwinnett County, but still have a Duluth address. You would only be paying for county property taxes. This is a very big difference with many of the suburbs of Metro Atlanta. So you want to think about where exactly you're living. You would get all of the benefits of living closer to the city center, maybe the walkability, maybe the better schools, but you'd be paying extra for property taxes. So where in Duluth you live highly affects how much you're paying for property taxes. In fact, I made an entire video about how much you should expect for monthly expenses here in this city. You can actually check that video out right here. I'll see you in the next one.